the hole. The time is now approximately 7 p.m. and the August 15th, 2024 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission will now begin. Good evening to those of you in attendance. My name is Scott Russ. I'm the chairman that will be conducting tonight's meeting. We appreciate that everyone of you has taken the time out of your schedules to attend tonight's meeting to observe how our town government works. At this time, if you would, please check your phones and make sure they're on silent mode. We would certainly appreciate that. Commissioners included. All Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meetings are public notice per Tennessee state law. This Planning Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded tonight and will be posted on the Farragut YouTube channel. And links to this and other Planning Commission meetings recordings may also be found on the Town of Farragut website. And I also understand that we are live streaming on the Farragut YouTube channel these days. That was my understanding. If not, you can find the recording on the channel later. Thank you. Anybody in attendance tonight should be able to pick a copy of the agenda up at the door when you came in tonight. For any persons here that would like to address this Planning Commission concerning an item on tonight's agenda, please pick up a blue comment card found at the door. Write your name, address, and the agenda number item that you wish to comment on, and give that to Bart, please. There will also be time reserved at the end of the business meeting for resident comments on non-agenda subjects, which also requires that you fill out a blue comment card. In order to conduct efficient business-like meetings, the town has adopted rules for how its meetings will be conducted. These rules are designed to keep the meeting progressing along, assure that all points of view are heard and considered, and to provide common courtesy to everyone. We ask that you observe the established meeting protocols found on the last page following the agenda when addressing the commission. So now I ask that if you're able, would you please stand for a moment of silence for prayer and reflection, to be followed by a recital of the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Thank you, everyone. First, I'd like to ask you if any of the commissioners or Bart, do you have any announcements or recognitions for tonight's meeting?
No, I don't.
Commissioners? No announcements, so approval of the agenda. Before we move on to that, Bart, sorry, I've established that we do have 7 commissioners present, and therefore we do have a quorum for tonight's meeting. Are there any amendments to the agenda for the July 18th, or not the August 15th Planning Commission meeting?
Yes, sir. The agenda item number 5 has been postponed at the request of the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Bart. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve amended agenda.
With motion and a second, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, let the record show that the amended agenda has been approved for tonight's meeting.
Who seconded that?
Bart, are there any amendments to the minutes from the July 18th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting?
No, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve?
To approve. Second.
With a motion and a second, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Let the record show that the posted July 18th, July 18th, 20. Let me get this straight. July 18th minutes have been approved.
I'm going to abstain from those minutes, please.
And I will abstain as well.
All right, thank you so much. At this time, I would like to take just a moment to recognize that this will be Commissioner Vice Mayor Pavlin's last meeting sitting with us. And it's been, how many years has it been now?
July of 2013.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for everything that you have brought to the table. It's been very strong.
I'll say a little bit. You guys,
Please,
I
please.
appreciate all of you for serving on this planning commission. Obviously, we're all unpaid. We do this because we love Farragut. We're all residents. One of the things that is very unique and special about Farragut is that we have a planning commission that is populated with residents. Not developer laden, not with the different agendas, we're all residents. We all live here and we love this community and we work very hard to keep it a beautiful and attractive community. We work with all property owners. It frustrates me to no end how many times we are out on social media denigrated and because we actively work with every property owner, especially if it's a resident, to have them understand what we're doing and work through the process of trying to meet what they're trying to accomplish without negatively impacting our community. And we have a couple of the applicants today that are resident, trying to find a novel way to handle a situation they have, and we'll bring our thinking caps to it. What I love about this community is 44 years into it, we're still doing that. And people that step up and do this, it's necessary, and we take the time to think about things, and I appreciate that from all of you, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. Well said, thank you. Okay, so we're going to start off, looks like we have, with the amended agenda, 3 business items tonight. The first item is agenda item number 3, discussion and public hearing on a request to rezone parcel 191.1, tax map 130, located south of Horn Federal Bank off of Parkside Drive, 1.57 acres from office district, that's 3 stories, O-1-3, to general commercial C1. Turkey Creek Land Partners, LLC, applicant.
Okay, this item was discussed at the meeting last month. It involves rezoning basically the last undeveloped tract in Turkey Creek. It's the tract there that's highlighted in red or bounded in red there. It is just south of the Home Federal Bank and it abuts North Campbell Station Road. However, it's accessed internally via a private easement that serves both the bank and the public shopping center. So there'll be no direct access to the property or any development that occurs on the property from Campbell Station Road. As you can see right now, both the Home Federal and this piece of property are zoned the office 1 to 3 stories, and what the proposal is is basically to extend the C1 zoning district that's on the Publix shopping center area over onto this property. So it's consistent, with the adjoining developments. It's consistent with the adjoining zoning. It'll provide a broader range of development options for that piece of property. And the C1 district is a pretty broad commercial district. It allows a very wide range of commercial uses. And like I said, it's consistent both with the adjoining zoning and the development pattern in the area. So staff can recommend approval of it.
I'm going to move to approve.
I'll second.
With a motion and a second, do we have anybody from the applicant that would like to speak on this matter tonight?
This one was fairly straightforward. We really didn't
Yeah,
have any
right,
discussion last
with
time.
discussion on it. Okay, I'm okay with that, unless anybody else has any other comments.
So just for clarification, you're actually approving the resolution PC 24-12 which would then recommend this to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, that's 2412.
We have a representative here.
Hello, good evening.
Jim Nixon, Turkey Creek Land Partners.
Jim. How are you this evening? I'm just fine. Great, great. Glad to see you.
Jim, can you give us a hint? What you got planned? Just what type of industry?
Some others, people looking at it, it's not zoned for commercial, so, we haven't done any deals or signed up anything yet. We have had some people looking at it that would reduce sales taxes. That's our goal.
Excellent. Yeah, well, when I first looked at this on the agenda tonight and started reading the packet, I had to, I looked at myself, I said, I wasn't really aware that that was part of the Turkey Creek development there. I just assumed that was, it's the last piece, and I just assumed it was a continuation of the property adjacent to it, just to the south.
Last piece of undeveloped property in Turkey Creek.
Wow, how about that? Well, that's good. All right, Jim, I appreciate it. At this time, since we have a motion and a second on the floor, and no discussion for further completion, do we have anybody signed up to comment on this issue?
No, sir, I don't have anyone.
Thank you. Well, in that case, I'll ask that all those in favor for passing Resolution 24-12 say yes.
Yes.
Noes? No noes? Bart, let the record show that Resolution 24.12 has been approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you coming out tonight.
Good luck with it. Appreciate it.
Next item we have on the agenda is agenda item number 4, discussion and public hearing on a request to rezone a portion of the property at 12715 Union Road from general single-family residential, or R2, to rural single-family residential, R1. It's 8.64 acres. Glaffenheim is the applicant. I apologize if I butchered somebody's name.
Pretty close.
Leslie Close, okay. Is it Will or Viz? Is Will, okay. The one L threw me off there. It might have been a misprint, right? Or is that correct? Okay, that's correct. All right. Thank you, Bart.
Okay. This item was also discussed last month. The property in question fronts along Union Road, and it's just west of Fox Run subdivision. It's got an existing single-family home on it. It's divided a bit by a tributary of Little Turkey Creek. Basically, on the west side, where the dwelling is now, is currently zoned R2, and on the east side, that's there next to Fox Run subdivision, is zoned R1. The property owner desires to keep chickens and potentially some other fowl on the property. That's allowed in R1 if the lot is large enough, and it's not allowed in R2. The original request at the July meeting was for the agricultural district, but I believe the Planning Commission discussed that and felt that the R1 would be more appropriate. It's more consistent with the adjoining properties and the way they're zoned. It's a pretty cut and dry rezoning application. It will accomplish what the property owner wants to do with their property. At the same time, it's consistent with the land use plan, and it's also consistent, with the existing development pattern in the area and the existing zoning pattern in the area. So staff can recommend approval of Resolution PC 24-13, which would recommend this on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, with the motion and a second, do you have anything that you'd like to add? You're comfortable with the R2 versus the agricultural? Or
R1.
R1 rather than the agriculture? Yes. No more apartments. And is there anybody signed up for comment, Bart?
No, sir, I don't have anyone.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments they'd like to add? I think we hashed it out pretty well the last time, and glad it's going to work out for you. With discussion now completed, a motion and a second on the floor. I'll ask all those in favor say yes.
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 Yes. Noes? No noes? Let the record show that PC 24-13 is approved unanimously.
Will, do you understand this goes to the board mayor and all the okay, for 2 readings, so in 2 separate. And I suspect it won't go on, the next one, it'll be the following, this next week, yeah, it'll probably be on the first, meeting in September. Would be the first chance they can get it on the agenda. Well, nobody. It's very consistent. I have one person is concerned just because they hear the farm animals, but that is allowed on R1, and it is consistent with, like they said, it's consistent with everything around. We don't have a leg to stand on to say, no, you can't rezone to R1. It just makes sense with the rest of this.
Well, you're down zoning. I mean, I'm not sure if we ever, in my history, we've ever denied somebody the ability to down zone, to
Yeah.
reduce intensity, and that's what
Yeah.
you're doing. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a no-brainer in my
Yeah.
book. Actually, I would have been fine with agriculture, but I also understand the rationale of kind of keeping the compatibility with the adjacent property, so.
Good.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Will. Okay, agenda item number 5 has been postponed, as noted earlier. Agenda item number 6, discussion on request to amend the text to the Farragut zoning ordinance to permit a second dwelling unit on an existing lot of record that is greater than 1.5 acres in the rural single-family residential R1 zoning district. Tyler Butler, applicant. This we carried over from last month.
Okay, so this item was postponed at last month's meeting, and it's only on for discussion purposes only tonight. The request is basically to amend the R1 zoning text to allow for second dwelling units to be built on an existing lot of record, so it wouldn't pertain to lots that are created in the future and that exceed 1.5 acres in size. The applicant has an existing lot that's located off of Fritz Road, and it's served by an existing driveway easement that you can see here that actually sits on a flag lot. So the property is all, was originally family property. I think it's still owned by family, but, so here's the flag lot, and that's not showing up real well, but.
Which one is theirs, the 714 or the 716?
714 is the property in question.
Okay.
But, this would, of course, if an amendment like this were to be done, it would apply to any R1 lot that's in excess of 1.5 acres. So 716 is actually the flag lot. That, here's the main part of the lot. Here's the quote-unquote flag stem that runs down to Fritz Road, which is a public road. And this is just a private driveway kind of easement that serves this lot and this lot now. So really the problem here is that because 714 has no lot frontage and really can't obtain lot frontage unless they were to improve this to the public road standard, there's no way to subdivide the property. It would also probably be hard to divide it so that, there was adequate setback around the existing house that was built a long time ago, to create, like essentially another flag lot off of that would, drop back in here to build another home on. So the applicant came in, met with staff originally, came to the staff developer meeting prior to the last meeting, and talked about options for doing this, whether or not it could be subdivided, whether or not a second home could be built on it, and that's just not permitted now. So really, what they're looking for is a potential text amendment to allow for second homes in situations like this to be built on the property. We did a little research on this. There's about 150 lots now in the town that meet these parameters. They're existing lots. They're in excess of 1.5 acres in size, and they are zoned R1. So about 15 of those are open space lots or owned by churches. So, you're really talking about 135 lots that currently exist in the town that this would be applicable to. Now, you know, we didn't evaluate each and every one of those lots. Some of those might be able to be subdivided, and, you know, from a staff perspective, we'd always recommend that a property owner subdivide if they can, because that makes, somewhere down the line, if they want to refinance one of the homes and not the other, if they want to sell one, not the other, they're not bound to the fact that they have two homes on one lot. They can't be divided off and then, you know, sold separately or financed separately or that sort of thing. Obviously, this property owner wants to do this for family. You know, they want to be able to build a second home and have a family member live on it, but you know, somewhere down the line, they will, you know, inevitably sell the property, and someone could buy it as an investment property and have rental on it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that, you know, I think the town and the planning commission need to think about as to, you know, what that might open up in the future. Right now, we do allow this situation to occur on agriculturally zoned properties. So, and there are some conditions that are applied for that it was spelled out in the staff write-up. Some of those conditions are the second dwelling unit has to be a single-family detached unit. The minimum lot size in the case of agricultural properties has to be 5 acres. In this case, it would be 1.5 acres. You know, setback compliance has to be met, you know, for the dwelling units. So the distance between the, you know, the dwelling units on the property. The minimum distances between dwelling units have to match as well. There's no additional access, you know, being required for the second dwelling unit, and adherence to all the applicable utility code and fire suppression requirements. So, you know, there are some code requirements to do that in the agricultural district. This would just be more potential lots, and obviously they're smaller lots, so it's, you know, it's 1.5 acres versus 5 acres on what you currently allow in an agricultural zone. You know, there are clearly some pros to doing it. It provides some additional housing options. It provides people that have properties like this, you know, the potential to have a dwelling unit, a second dwelling unit on there for rental purposes, for rental income. It meets one of the strategies actually for housing that's in the land use plan. You know, so there's some benefits to the property owner, but there's obviously some potential impacts down the line for some additional housing in certain areas of town. Again, I think if it wasn't a requirement, certainly staff would encourage any property owner to, if they didn't subdivide, at least to make sure that they laid the second home on the lot in such a way that it could be subdivided in the future. And that may be the case on some of these existing lots. And unfortunately, for this property owner that's making the request, you know, that's not really an option for them. So, which is why they're making the, you know, the potential request for a text amendment. So it's really a discussion issue. There's pros and cons to doing it. I think from a staff perspective, we'd like to get input from the planning commission, see whether or not this is even worth pursuing. If it is, we can, you know, try to draft up some potential ordinance language that would accomplish this and put some conditions on for further review in the future.
Maybe 5 or 10 years ago, we had some discussions on accessory dwelling units, and to me, that's what's kind of being described by the applicant's proposal is an ADU. And I don't think the Planning Commission was real comfortable with a lot of widespread ADUs, and we're worried about conflicts in neighborhoods and so forth. But I think having, number one, neighborhoods, even some neighborhoods that are probably on here that are larger than 1.5 acres, and there's not a bunch, but the one that comes to mind first is Steeplechase. You know, I think a lot of those neighborhoods probably already have their own covenants and restrictions that govern this sort of thing in perpetuity, and there's nothing that this body can do to change those covenants and restrictions. So I supported some limited ADUs back then. There wasn't it was so complicated that, and some of you probably remember those discussions.
We went on for several months.
Yeah, we spent.
Finally threw our hands up and said, we can't do this.
Well, we did. We said it was so complicated, and we kept putting, setting the goal line a little further this way and a little further this way, and then all of a sudden we're like, we're doing all this for nothing. I like the idea of it because it does give some folks, kind of like a mother-in-law suite. I think there should be, some ties to maybe a percentage of the main structure. Having the ability to future subdivide, I think for a lot of folks, or forcing them to have the ability to subdivide and meet all those requirements is going to force a lot of folks to probably not do it. And so again, I look at it as this is a unit, a dwelling unit that is accessory to the main house. And I'd like to pursue some discussion on it. I'm just one planning commissioner. I think it's appropriate in the scenario that we're talking about over on Fretz Road. But it is something that, some people, I think there was a lot of, I can't remember all the concerns. People were worried that they would turn into short-term rentals, which we already govern, and they were worried about issues.
Doubling the density, and there was concerns about what does that mean for the average, like Village Green, you just all of a sudden start building these all over the place, and what are you doing with traffic? And
Right.
there were a lot of trying to figure out how to manage and maintain it was hard.
Well, there's no doubt putting a 1.5 acre minimum eliminates the vast majority of the property in the town of Farragut from ever being able to do this. The problem is I'd almost want to go case by case and make sure we're not creating something of unintended consequences that we didn't think about, but I kind of like the direction that, what the applicant's proposing. Obviously, it'd be great if they had road frontage. Obviously, if it was something that had been subdivided in the past 40 years, they probably, we would have requirements that are plating requirements where they would have more road frontage. I think it looks like they're dealing maybe with a joint permanent access easement. But I do think that having, and I can't remember the square footages. I think we talked maybe like 1,000 square feet or 1,200 square foot maximum. I'd like to hear kind of what the applicant has in mind for theirs. But so, it was something that's important to me for my support would be it's pretty obvious that this structure is ancillary to the main house, and it's not equal to or even close to the main house. And again, I don't want to make, if somebody has a modest house, I don't necessarily want them to all of a sudden say, well, you can only go 20% of the size. So I think we've got to be careful about saying that you can only do something like that. But maybe some feedback for some other commissioners that, just the direction of this, and is this something that's palatable to us or not?
We had quite a bit of discussion at the staff developer meeting, trying to look at different ways of perhaps accessing what might be doable or not what have you, but it just seemed to not really get a lot of traction on that. It was something else doable. And the applicant, you also have an existing structure on the back side of that property, which complicates kind of where you might place another building and still maintain that one, because that's a rather big building.
Yeah, it's just a barn.
But you gonna maintain that, or you gonna?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's not,
Can
This
you
is
step
the-
up to the mic?
This is the barn here.
Let's get you on the record if
And
you
this
don't
is
mind.
single-family
Up on
home.
the microphone, that'd be.
There is an existing structure on the property too, other than just the main house.
yes, so that's my parents' house.
Could you, if you don't mind, just if we could give your name and the address, please?
Yes, Tyler Butler, 714 Fritz Road.
Okay, thank you, Tyler.
But yeah, that's the barn below the house. But I will be, not as of right now, but I will be maintaining that. So that's why I'm trying to get my house built over there. That way I can take care of the problem.
That's one thing, to situate a new house on that piece of property, it's, relationship to the other house and the other structure and what have you, kind of narrows down where you can place your house.
Well, we were kind of thinking maybe below the barn.
Down where that tree line is.
Yeah, between the tree line and the barn. Not 100% sure yet, we're just trying to get this thing done first.
Well, Tyler, something else you might want to think about is I suspect that your family's property probably predates sewer on Fred's Road, so you're probably still on septic. And so, now you probably have sewer availability, I just don't know how easy it is to tie into it. But your drain, the location of your drain field, plus your reserve drain field, plus the location of for the new ADU's drain fields, those are some things that you definitely want to really dig into, to make sure you got your arms around. Because I suspect that unless you could get an easement from a neighbor getting out to Fred's Road, and I don't know if the sewer's on the west side or the east side of Fred's Road, but it might be a little challenging. And
So I already reached out to First Utility. I can hook up to sewer. I will just have to come down the easement driveway.
okay,
I reached out to LCD. There's already power on the property. I can get utilities.
okay. So that probably would be something that I think for a certain size, let's say between, if we chose 1.5 acres as the minimum, I would think that we would want to say, hey, between 1.5 and 10, you've got to have access to sewer. Because it just, when you're doing a septic system, it really complicates things, and when you're adding another septic system, I think that would be general. I think obviously if you're on a big parcel, then you've got plenty of room for septic systems plus reserve drain fields. That might be something that we would think about. Obviously, if sounds like you've already spent some time figuring that one out. They'd probably just have you do a low-pressure system. That'd be a lot cheaper than trying to gravity all the way out to Fred's. But it's good that you've checked that box, because that might be a real obstacle that is sometimes unforeseen of how challenging it is.
I would say I'm really struggling with I understand what you're trying to do, I really do, and I'm sympathetic to it, because I understand that this is an issue, and we all want to age in place as we get older, and sometimes we need a little help. But I'm struggling with the potential unintended consequences. And that's what we all struggled with in that discussion exercise. It was actually for split rail. The guy that was developing split rail at the time.
Is this the ADUs?
Yeah.
ADU conversation? Okay, I
Yeah,
couldn't remember where.
That's where it started, was he was going to, and Bob Markley had brought it up to the, so, and to add an additional layer to this, which is kind of something I've been working with Mark on, is amending agricultural or creating an estates zoning district, because we have so many issues with our estate. People that want to subdivide to estate lots have to jump through all these hoops and get all of these exceptions. So this kind of is overlaying with that, with the 1.5 as the definition of what we would consider an estate-sized lot. I'm wondering if upping it to 1.75 would take out some of this, some of these other lots. I really want to understand how, because I look at this, and this is Farragut View is shown, Bel Air is shown, and neither one of them have HOAs, and I really want to understand how they feel about this as well, because this would obviously impact them. And of course, Steeplechase, you mentioned Steeplechase out there, they have quite a few lots that are that size. I'm just trying to, when you go down this road, sometimes you think about it one way and you're not seeing all the consequences you didn't think about. And I want to make sure that we are, if we're going to recommend this, obviously this is my last meeting. I can ponder all I want and then back out of this very gracefully.
Well, you'll be a citizen soon enough, and
Yeah.
your thoughts are equally as important.
So that's kind of where I'd like to go, because Farragut View and Bel Air residents would be directly impacted by this, and how do they feel as a neighbor?
And they may not have the covenants and restrictions that some of the other newer neighborhoods have.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure neither one of them do.
I have a question for Bart.
Sure.
Do you have any idea or guess as to how many of these 135 lots are able to be subdivided?
We didn't evaluate that, so we could go back and evaluate that and see, and then,
Because I'm saying maybe perhaps we do this for lots that cannot be subdivided and use it only as in that instance?
Yeah,
And that
that-
maybe
Maybe,
that'll
yeah.
cut our population down where the consequences get smaller.
Right, and that was, I had the exact same thought as Commissioner Green. And so I also think that you could even add to it, not currently in a subdivision, maybe.
Well, you gotta be careful about the term, because the applicant's property technically was a subdivision, even though it's not a subdivision like what we think of today. But when you talk about legal terms and the platting of property, it is, I mean, when you took a 1,000-acre farm and turned it to two 500-acre farms, that was a subdivision. So, but I think that.
So is there
that-
a way to define it differently?
I think there could be a way to define
An
it differently.
existing neighborhood.
Well, some sort of exists, but, yeah, you gotta be careful about that,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we can wordsmith that. I guess what we probably need to think, is there enough support on the planning commission to spend the time? Because we did spend a lot of time on ADUs, and this is kinda like an ADU. Maybe your vision's different than that. Maybe this is gonna be the main house, the big house, and the other house is gonna be the accessory house, and you know, that's not a bad idea either. But, the unintended consequences of trying to figure out, you know, if we open Pandora's box, is it a good thing or is that a bad thing? Generally, I like the idea of having this kind of flexibility in increasing housing choices in our town. Our town has got, I mean, starter homes in the town of Farragut are now $500,000. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so we're trying to, you know, have opportunities for, you know, keep families together and try to make our community a little more affordable. And I think this goes a long way in trying to make it a little more affordable for folks. And I'm fine with the rentals. Obviously, there's not support for short-term rentals, but for, you know, long-term rentals, I mean, I'm okay with that as well. We just need to think about the parcels that we still have out there. Is yours exactly 1.5 acres, or are you somewhere?
He's 1.84, I think I saw on KGIS.
Well, it'd be too arbitrary for us to say, okay, anything larger than 1.84,
But
it'd be
1
hard to
3/4.
defend that. But maybe 1 3/4 would help narrow it down a little bit.
We'd have to check that as to
Well, at some
exactly what it
point,
was.
he's probably gonna have to have,
you
he's probably gonna have to have
know,
a survey.
sometimes
when he-
KGIS is off.
Yeah, when he builds a house, you're gonna need a survey anyway to be able to locate the actual corners of the house, as well as your, you know, making sure you're meeting by your setbacks and so forth. And the ADUs had setbacks. I mean, there was a lot of things that we put in there. Matter of fact, there was even sometimes the ADUs had more setbacks than the main house. So, but again, I'm supportive of trying to move forward. You know, it is real complicated of all just, and I think we've probably only seen, you know, above the water of the iceberg, not below the water of the iceberg, of all the, you know, what-if scenarios. But,
Well, I think that's why we need to put more, some of the, more dive into the data a little more to see out of the 150 or 135, you know, if we'll do some down to even half that, to see what we,
Well,
lower than that, and what the
Yeah,
vulnerability would be.
Basically, what we'd have to do is probably look at each one of those lots and see how much frontage it had, you know, because that's really what the determinative thing is if, you know, can they get enough frontage to meet the requirement, you know, to then subdivide the lot?
Some of these are, like this, you're showing all of Fox Run's open space, so.
My guess is we're not gonna see many
Yeah.
situations like this. That's just my,
well,
off the top of my head, yes.
Yeah,
I kind of like the idea of
A
having.
piece of property,
Sorry.
the way it's situated, and off that, make it a private drive. And after the discussion we had in staff developer about how maybe we could get to Fretz Road, that was a non-starter.
yeah, but there could be a number of lots like up in here, you know, that are fairly narrow and it, you know.
It can be subdivided,
Yeah, it might be difficult to divide those because they don't have enough road frontage and then also, you know.
We have the 3-to-1 rule.
Exactly, you get too much, you know, depth to width ratio on the lot,
You're able
so.
to somehow wordsmith the language of cannot be in an existing, what Shannon's proposing, an existing neighborhood.
And maybe as soon as you have like recorded covenants and restrictions,
But you can also change
Farragut
those.
View doesn't have recorded covenants or.
and I would like to hear, I think Bel Air, Steeplechase probably has covenant restrictions because of the horses and some of the things.
Although some of those covenants,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, okay, just very basic. They probably say no,
And-
basic things like no junkyards and things like
and
that.
honestly, a lot of even in some of the other subdivisions, without auditing all the covenants, we wouldn't know whether or not they have provisions against further, putting a second dwelling on it. They may never have envisioned that. So, I'm not sure.
So if he
You know,
could,
that's all that.
subdivide, this would be a non-issue, right?
Yeah. If he was sitting there and had enough frontage on Fritz Road to further divide it, he could drop the property line in and build a second structure and just own both lots.
And I'm assuming that you want your house to be not limited by the size of your parents' house that's already there, right? So I kind of see this as two separate things.
It maybe
Like,
is,
I
yeah.
like
Yeah.
Noah's idea of exploring the accessory dwelling unit, but I don't think that's what this is. I think this is maybe somewhat unique based on the evaluation of the other 135 properties situation where he would subdivide but simply can't in order to build an additional residence.
Well, for instance, on the, already in the agricultural zoning district, like one of the conditions to do this, beyond the 5 acres is, the second dwelling unit is a single-family detached unit. It doesn't have a size requirement on it, so that could be a small 2-bedroom house. It could be a 5-bedroom house if there was enough room and, sewer capacity. So there's, it's not necessarily a subservient type structure or like an accessory smaller type structure. It's just a second single-family dwelling unit of really any size in the agricultural district. So, and in this district, the way, we originally discussed it, it would just be a second home that would, there'd have to be enough physical space on the lot
Sure.
to meet the setbacks from the property lines and also the separation between the buildings.
I have a question on that. How does that separation distance work? I saw that in the ordinance and it was a little confusing. I'm not quite sure how that works. Because there's already 2 buildings on the lot, so he's gonna put one more building on there, and so there're gonna be some separation distances between
and
the 3.
And we'd have to look at that and see exactly how that,
I
would
think
pan
the way-
out on a smaller lot like this.
Does that restrict him more than he can be restricted?
Well, again, he needs this, to do what he wants to, but, we're kind of looking at it from the town as a whole and all of these lots,
Yeah,
so
I
we'd
know,
have
but
to consider.
If we put in the ordinance a separation requirement that makes him not able to do what he wants to do, then we're kind of,
Yeah,
I think it was derived from a fire code issue, so if one dwelling unit catches on fire, and maybe it may not be it may only be 20 feet. I think we have
Well,
quite a few single-family neighborhoods that just have 10-foot setbacks. Well, 2 10-foot setbacks equal 20 feet between structures.
and also and I didn't work on the change for the agricultural district, but, those tend to be larger tracts, and someone might have just been wanting to put a second structure on there, but we didn't want them to get in a situation where if they did want to subdivide in the future, they may have very well been able to subdivide, they may have just chosen not to. And, but, you wouldn't want them to put the homes 20 foot apart or 15 foot apart and then not be able to drop a property line in between, so we're trying to, I'd say when Mark,
She couldn't subdivide, it was zoned agricultural, I think she only had 5 acres, so she couldn't subdivide and stay agricultural.
and say agriculture, but she could have rezoned to
She could have
something else. The
rezoned
thing
R1
is
and subdivided.
you would not want to see someone that potentially could divide in the future, put the structures so close together that then they couldn't meet setbacks if you
Yeah.
did drop a property line in. So that's why both the setbacks from the external property lines is important, but also the distance between the structures, because you don't want someone to, basically shoot themselves in the foot down the road, be able to divide the property.
Well, as long as they know the risk on the front end with the separation, that, hey, based upon whatever number, if we get there,
Yeah.
whatever number we come up with, if somebody goes in with their eyes wide open and understands that, hey, I think
Yes, that's-
forcing somebody to have the ability to subdivide in the future hamstrings the whole idea in my mind. Now, I'm still thinking accessory dwelling units, not a second equal
Homes.
home.
Yeah.
So for me, and maybe it's just completely apples and oranges, there's,
And I think there is a difference, because a lot of the accessory dwelling units tend to be more rental or family type things, to where, someone has they have a garage, they convert it
Like
into
we talked
an
about Carrie's
apartment,
houses and things, right.
an apartment as opposed to a full home, and,
Right.
you know, just from past experience and having worked in some rural areas in planning, you know, we would see family members a lot of times put, you know, their kid would get married, and they'd build a house on the lot, you know? And they'd be like, oh, this is gonna be fine forever, and then they get divorced. And, you know, one of the parties gets the house, and now they don't necessarily all want to live on the same piece of land, they want to divide it off. And if they're too close together, sometimes you can't. So if you're building full structures that, you know, two completely discrete, single-family homes, you know, just from a, you know, looking down the, you know, the pike a bit, if it's possible to have them separated enough so that it could be divided in the future, should people's conditions change, it's better than having them packed together. Whereas on a smaller accessory dwelling unit, which is really, you know, like something for an elderly parent, or, you know, like a second income, if you're retired on your property and you're, you know, basically having a one or two bedroom apartment there, that, you know, that is a different case, I think.
Well, there is potential on that, I don't know how that lot, the lot next to it, you go back to the other map. So 714, that's a pretty sizable lot, or all of those combined, the developer could come in and he has that driveway, that easement, that he could make a public road and then subdivide that, and then all of a sudden, that's putting, I'm sorry, that 714 is yours. If 716 and then the surrounding development wanted to have a public road there, what does that look like for him eventually if that does become a public road?
Well, if it was a public road, then they'd be able to divide.
I
But
understand
yeah,
that. It isn't now, but it could be someday.
it could be, yeah.
And so what does that, so that's what you're kind of talking about, is there's an opportunity at some point possibly.
Yeah, and in this case, you know, because of the existing home, you know, there might not even be enough setback distance to put a flag lot in there, but, you know, again, if a property owner came in and wanted to sit down with staff, and they were like, you know, and this was permitted, and they could put another structure on the lot, you know, we would probably sit down and say, it would be best if you move that a little further away, because somewhere down the line, you might want to divide this property, you know?
Or you could consider, hey, at some point, if that does want to subdivide, the barn would have to come out.
Oh, yeah, for some, well, you know, depending on where they could situate, you know, the structure, but, you know, from this standpoint, it's, we can look at that and try to, you know, come up with some conditions. It's really, at this point, whether or not, you know, you want to further pursue this, or is this an issue that's just not worth pursuing?
And that's what the problem was when we delved into ADUs. We kept doing what ifs. What if you do this? What if that happens? What if that happens? Because you have to think about all of what you're setting up. And that's when it became so overwhelming that I remember Betty Dick was like, nobody wants this. We're going to stop.
But, you know,
It was
but
relief, really, because it was so complicated.
I would be interested to know if there's any language that could be crafted for this particular situation where you're not able to subdivide, they're a minimum distance apart from it and all other structures, and it's not in a neighborhood subdivision, however you want to legally
Yeah.
word that, and then tell me how many of those 135 properties still apply
Need
to that.
Yeah.
Or,
I think it'd be a lot
yeah,
less.
yeah. I mean, we could look at that, or if, you know, if we can, you know, speak to the town attorney, and if there's a way to craft it to where it's just properties that can't be further subdivided. You know, that, you know, because of their, you know, their setting and physical characteristics, you know, they don't have the opportunity to subdivide. Maybe it only applies to them.
Right,
And that's why we're
however
here
you want to do
tonight.
it, but there was talk about
Really.
Bel Air and how do they feel and how do
Yeah.
you know, so that's why I said the whole no subdivision, no neighborhoods, however you
Yeah.
guys want to work that out.
But, you know, but if
And see
if
how
it's
many of
something
those
that,
we have left.
you know, I mean, if it's, I guess the issue is, you know, are you looking to just help, you know, like a property owner, you know, has got an issue here, or it is allowing larger R1 zone properties the ability to put a second dwelling unit on a good idea regardless of where they are in the town, and let the covenants
Sure, so what I'm,
control that.
You want to keep parts of that as access to a public road.
Yeah, well, right now, that's the limiting factor for them. Yeah.
Well, talking, blue sky a little bit, could you put language in that could you create a future easement that would protect the plate relative to that road, private drive became a public road, and you'd have that easement available if that's subdivided down the road.
Well, right now, we don't allow subdivisions off of easements, you know, if,
We
so,
had a driveway easement from that, if that became a public road, and you had an easement down to the flag lot you would create, if and when that time came, it's like you kind of
well,
protect the future.
you know, that's something they could do in the future, if they controlled the whole lot. So, I understand what you're saying.
Well, and it's not about, just picking and choosing, it's not about that. For me, it's about how many of those properties do we have left that apply to this, and what's the worst that could happen out of those left properties? And then I can make a
That's the first
decision.
thing we need.
And we're
Yeah.
providing some flexibility for these
Right.
property
Yeah.
owners outside of neighborhoods, established neighborhoods, that could pursue this.
And didn't we do something similar for that property that was near the Publix and the setback?
Well, that was, no, that's because it was planned to be commercial
Okay.
on the land use map, and it was residential, and requiring a setback that was, yeah.
But it was a one-off.
We just waived
It
the
was
set,
a one-
we
It
waived
was
the
a
setback
single
requirement.
one-time,
It
you
was a
know,
one-off.
it wasn't,
Yeah, it
we
wasn't
didn't
wrong,
have,
yeah.
yeah, it was a one-property thing, so.
Can we go back to that other drawing for a second? 716, are those two residential homes on that piece of property?
No, the other one below is a garage.
That's just a garage, okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question on that drawing up there. It's depicted that driveway to that back garage is part on 714 and part on 716. Is that accurate, or?
Yes, that is. So the 716 was my grandfather's house. He owned all of it.
Yeah.
And my dad built, and then 710 was my aunt.
So this is all a family deal here.
Yeah.
So you don't mind if half the driveway's on one property? Okay, got it.
Mr. Butler, I got a question for you. Are you in a hurry? No. Okay, because this could take a long time. And we're asking the staff to do a lot of digging. Obviously, we don't want the staff to go and interpret somebody else's covenant restrictions. That's way beyond their purview and the time that they have available to them. But there might be a couple of residents from Bel Air and also off of Admiral Road, and you guys probably already have a list. I mean, I think of Jeannie Bukowski and Bel Air, some residents that are fairly well connected in their neighborhood, talking to people and just trying to get their feedback on, hey, this is something we're looking at. It could impact your neighborhood because that's a neighborhood that's kind of similar to Mr. Butler's neighborhood.
I had someone from Farragut do that.
And that might, so I mean, I think it would be important just to poll and see that hey, we're going to make potentially something eligible that's never been eligible in the past. And how do you feel about it? And they may come out and say, hey, this is a great idea. We've always wanted to do this. But it would, and they may come up with some things that we hadn't even thought of yet of unintended consequences that we've got to make sure that we're fairly addressing. I wish it was easy as just we could say, hey, we're going to let Mr. Butler do this. The consistency in the town has been something that's real important to us. We hold the bar high. We know we do. I'm sure we frustrate a lot of people, and you were probably frustrated the first time that you came in and you were told, no, you can't do this. But what you can be rest assured is there's nobody getting special treatment. We're going to say, okay, if we're going to do this for Mr. Butler, let's do it for everybody else in a similar scenario. And that's what we're talking about tonight is trying to take a look at every lot that's similar to yours so we can make it consistent for everybody and not just picking our favorites as much as we'd like to say, hey, you're good to go build your house.
I
Tyler?
don't know that properties in Bel Air would be similar to his. It's like,
And-
to me.
Well, Bel Air, they may
it's
come
like
up and
a
say,
totally
hey,
different-
or they may say, hey,
it's
we're
like
all,
apples and oranges.
right, they may say, hey, this is not,
Farragut view
right.
is different, though. Farragut view is, most of those lots cannot be subdivided because of the way they're so narrow and long. So
they are narrow, they're long.
I want to talk with them, yeah.
But isn't that, again, like neighborhood subdivision
Yes.
thing,
I mean,
which.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
what
technically
is
his,
that?
technically his was part of a subdivision at one point, when his grandfather
Yeah.
started,
What's
you know,
the sign look
subdividing the
like
lots,
for your
the lots.
subdivision when you pull onto your street? What is the sign, what's the name of your subdivision? Right.
You actually
Yeah,
probably
I-
do have a name, you go back to the Knox County, Register of Deeds, there probably actually
That-
is a
that-
name, something. and
Noah's
probably
right,
named
that's very hard to
your
define.
grandfather, yeah,
Right, but
it
you
is,
get my point.
we
You
do
guys
get your
my
point. When you're, yeah, no, what we're
That's
trying,
counterproductive.
what we're trying to do is we're trying to not affect what I'm gonna call traditional subdivision neighborhoods, which is a lot of blanket terms that have a lot of different meanings. So,
I'm sure there's a way we could figure that out. Platted by, originally developed by.
but what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it so it's very objective for the staff in the future. And where we've really gotten ourselves in trouble is when it's not, when it's subjective. And somebody says, well, I don't really think it says that. And the staff goes, well, that's what I think it says. And that's how we end up in litigation, and that's what we don't want. And so we're trying to make it where the staff can interpret it, and you, as a resident, somebody who wants to build, can go online, look at our municipal code, and go, okay, this makes sense. I understand what I can't do. Bart, do you feel like you've got, like I said,
You totally confused?
I wouldn't be
No,
surprised.
I understand what you want. You want to have like a sense of how many of these lots are,
Cannot be further subdivided.
cannot be further divided potentially, and, you know, exactly which areas of town this would kind of impact the most.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Mr. Butler, this is probably, I mean, we are asking the staff to do a lot of legwork, so this might be something that, maybe we don't, we might skip next month, and then all of a sudden they get some data back, and we look at it, and then, I wouldn't be surprised if we spend, 6 months kind of off and on occasionally discussing this, because it is, it's not something where we just have a template for it already made up. We go, okay, this is what we do in a scenario like this. What we're trying to do is create something that addresses your needs and hopefully achieve some of the goals in our land use plan. It helps, which the entire community collaborated on, of what they kind of want the town of Farragut, to look like in some of those things. And, yours does address one of those, and Bart talked about it earlier. So I guess, Bart, do you kind of have a feel? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you a lot of wiggle room, so we're not throwing all this stuff on you, and we expect it. If you can get some information feedback next month, obviously, Mr. Butler, obviously we'll get him involved again, and if you can't, we also understand that.
Yeah, no, I think I've got a good sense of what you want to look at. I'm not sure how long it'll take us to do it, but I think we can look at all these and, maybe simplify it down to the ones that have potentially enough frontage to further divide and not get into the nitty-gritty of looking at where the existing structures are on them, because that's, then we're gonna have to sit there with aerial photos and scale things out to see, whether or not they can meet a setback or something like that. But, even that might cut things down enough to, to really see where, where most of these fall. So, we can start there and take a look at it.
Mr. Butler, I have a question historical perspective here. There obviously, that was a plot, I guess your grandfather made, like the original larger piece of land. When was the last action taken to subdivide to the lot lines we see now? Do you remember when that might have taken place?
So my dad built 1994. I was only 3 years old.
So that's when that piece of property was cut out?
Correct, and then, well, my aunt built before late 80s, early 90s.
Well, the last one was 94.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Butler, after everything, the conversation you've heard here, is there anything on there that anybody has said that you might need some clarification on, or do you have any questions for any of us on the conversations we had tonight? Because it looks like, as a commission, we're gonna do, I guess, what we do in these situations and take it back and, drill some data out of it and knock heads and find out what we can come up with and bring it back in front of the commission again. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Too. Appreciate it. Thank you. Bart, do we have any utilities for tonight?
No, sir.
And Do we have anybody signed up for
No, sir.
residence forum?
Nope, no one signed up.
That said, the time is approximately 8:00 PM, and without objection, the August 15th, 2024 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Louise Pavlin, for your service.